Hey, how's it going? Let's learn how to add some formatting to the contents of the cell in our Excel files. As usual, we need to import the xlsxwriter module. We need to create a workbook and give it a path and a file name. And we need to create a worksheet that we then associate with this workbook. I'm going to call that worksheet analysis. And now we're going to introduce the new thing, which is a format. Formats are objects that we associate with the workbook, and we can then use these formats when we write data to the sheets in our workbook. So I'm going to create a success format. So I'm calling the add format function on the workbook, and now I need to pass it the characteristics of the success format. For starters, it makes sense to me that a success cell would have a green background. So let's give it a green background. Let's also give it a different font, not something used normally in Excel. Let's give it the font Century. And let's make it larger than usual. So I'm going to set it to the font size of 22 pixels. Okay, so now that I run this, a new format has been added to the formats in the workbook, and we can actually verify this. And here we can see a couple of formats that are associated with the workbook. Now, one useful thing to know is that if we call the first element of this list of formats, we get a format object. And the trick is there's a function in Python called help. So if I call help and I send it this format object, you'll notice that a ton of information is printed out. This is information that's created by the authors of the xlsxwriter module. So they've written all this information for us for the situation when we call help, and it actually has some useful stuff. It tells us the kind of things we can do with our formats. We can align things into cells. We've already used background color. You might notice that we don't actually need to use this set underscore. We can just use this BG color in our list of characteristics for the formats. We can bold things. Actually, let's try bold. If we look a little bit further here, we can see that bold needs to be set to true when we use it. The default is true, and it turns that property on, and it doesn't return anything. So let's use that in our format. We'll include bold here, and we'll set it equal to true. So now the contents of whatever cell we apply the success format to will have the background color of green. It will have the font of Century, the font size of 22, and it will be bolded. So let's run this success format one more time. I'm going to comment out the help function because we don't really need that anymore. And then let's create some data and apply the success format to it. So in our worksheet, we're going to call the write function. And as usual, we need to give it a cell reference. Let's say B2 for now. And then some content. Spock is logical. And now the new thing. In the write function, we can actually send a success format, which will specify what kind of format the contents of that cell will have. So if I send it the success format that we just created, and then finally save this to an actual Excel file by closing the workbook, we should now have an Excel file that has a cell in B2 with the content of Spock is logical, and it should have all of these characteristics. Let's verify this. I open up my terminal, and you'll notice I've navigated to the output folder because that's the folder that I'm saving my Excel file in, and I call open. It's going to open OpenOffice for us, and there you go. We have our contents. It's in cell B2. It has the content of Spock is logical. The background is green. You'll notice the font here is Century. It's the font size 22, and it's bolded, so it seems to have worked. And that's how you apply formats to content in your Excel files.